Firstly, good evening, everyone. Congratulations, Piyush. Joy, I read a lot of Ken Follett, so that is crime fiction, right? And I was obsessed. Anytime we were traveling, I would pick up a Ken Follett because then I wouldn't need to sleep until I finished the book. I would just keep reading. So Ken Follett was one of my favorites. I've read some others, but they've not stuck for some reason or the other. And then I think over the years I've begun to enjoy reading what we call thriller scripts, which is basically crime fiction. And that's how I met Piyush also. And he brought a script to me that I thought was fabulous. Let's see what happens in that. But and then he told me about this book. I said, I'd love to read it. So he sent me 3 chapters. And I think that's very unfair. Because he sent me 3 chapters and I was dying to know what's happening next.
I just wanted to keep her in suspense.
Yeah. So I said, you know what? I'll come to the launch if I have to. But I want to know what's happening. So I think he was just forced to invite me. No, I'm kidding. And then he asked me if I'd launch it, and that's how I'm here. But yeah, so I think my relationship or my liking for crime fiction is slowly growing.
I mean, you starred in one of the rare suspense thriller in popular cinema, When we really look at suspense crime thrillers in popular cinema, we don't find too many. We had an Ittifaq way back which could qualify as a suspense thriller. We had a Jewel Thief much before that. We had a Kahani. They've been very few and far between, They often say in Indian cinema that when it comes to suspense thrillers, a crime fiction, they want to reveal the identity of the villain earlier on. Otherwise, the audience doesn't have the patience for that kind of suspense, this thing. What's your take on that?
I think, when the villain isn't revealed very early, that has its own charm also. For example, I can only think of Sholay, where Gabbar, it's not a crime thriller, but I'm just saying his entry happens much later in the film, but the legend of Gabbar grabs you much before you see Gabbar. So that's one way of doing it. But I think for example, in this book, I'm enjoying getting into the head of the serial killer. Because we all want to believe that criminals, people who are, deviant personalities, there is some kind of reason for the way they've turned out. So, in a sense, I'm very grateful that he's first introduced us to that, and then he'll take us into the crimes of this guy.
I was quite fascinated by the form that you picked up in this book. You wrote it like your antagonist in this book writes it like a diary. But the diary she's writing, the information and the knowledge that she's putting, she's piecing together from the diary of the other antagonist. I call both of them antagonists because both have a history. Yeah? So it's like a diary within a diary. You remember Wuthering Heights, there was a 3-person this thing. So you went into that particular form, which was quite interesting because it at the same time gives an objectivity to the way you're learning. So why choose this form?
So you know what, like with the, even in Kahani, you all did the same thing. Basically, the idea is to flip the character. Sometimes you look at the character as a positive light, and suddenly you start looking at the character in the end, like in Kahani, the whole understanding of everything changes. So my thing is that I keep doing that throughout my book. Like, you don't know who is the antagonist and who's the protagonist. Even though one person might be a police person, the other person might be a serial killer, you don't know who's the good person, who's the bad person till it all gets resolved, And that's my idea, because that's what life is all about, Sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad. Police people are good, police people are bad. Criminals are good, criminals are bad. That's how I keep,
in this book, for example, both the characters are fated to follow a certain direction. There are certain circumstances which are heaped on them, and they take a certain direction. But one person is redeemable because she has guilt, whereas the other person doesn't suffer from guilt, and therefore seems like not redeemable.
You know, yeah, but at the end, I mean, you know, so that you'll have to read the book to get the answer to that. I don't want to answer that, but Vidya, what he's saying is that there is the character of the police lady who actually, Maithili Prasad, who actually looks very much like you. So I'm just giving you a hint. Okay, she behaves also very much like you. You could be her. Hint, hint. No. So there is this the idea of a police woman who has a dark past. You know, I think that to me fascinated me the most. And then I looked at the dark man and I said, who is the darker one of them all? Is the police woman the darker person, or is the serial killer the darker person? So that's the question that I keep, you know, throwing at the reader. And in the end, perhaps I answer it. I don't know whether I answer it or not. It depends on the reader, and perspective of the reader.
I must add there that when I read it, I was imagining a film playing out. So now that you've suggested this, maybe we should all take the cue and do something about it.
Yes.
You know, I know it's a mere coincidence that for the first time I'm playing a cop in a film called Teen, which I'm shooting for in Kolkata. When Piyush called me with regard to the book, and then when I read it, I knew about Maithili Prasad, who's also a cop, and I said, you know, everything's just falling into place.
So, you know, like how the heroes, they play cops in many movies, even the heroines can do that. It's allowed.